We good? Live? Okay. Well, welcome everybody to a very special episode of Red Scared on the People's Voice Network. It's good to be back. I know I keep saying that every week, but it's still true no matter what. Now, I'm going to cut to the chase here. The reason why this episode is very special to me and, other people in particular is because I've been planning it for quite some time. Almost a month now. And to cut to the chase, we're going to be revisiting a topic that we've touched on multiple times on this show and done multiple segments too. Sex work. Sex work is a topic that I genuinely believe it doesn't get the attention it deserves. The conversations in mainstream media that revolve around sex work don't do it justice or just straight up butcher the subject. Sex work is the world's oldest profession, which makes the majority of the masses' ignorance and, lack of knowledge on the subject even more irritating. And it overall contributes to the harm that is perpetrated against sex workers on the political level and on the social level as well. There has not been a point in Western history, at least, when we just look at Western history, where sex workers haven't been demonized, haven't been treated with disrespect, haven't been criminalized, haven't been persecuted, right? And even now, in modern day in the media, we portray sex workers in a very negative light. Prostitutes are always, labeled as just filthy and undesirable and desperate in any mainstream depiction of prostitutes. Or they're just labeled as, gold diggers and people who are just on the underbelly of society, the undesirables as we label them. However, throughout my life, I've always felt that this portrayal and this perception that we have of them in the mainstream, it's always come off as a little off to me. It never made much sense. Prostitution, like I said, is the world's oldest profession. They've been around for so long. So why is it after all this time are we still treating them this way? From a young age, I was able to understand the concept of it, but also I was able to understand that it's more complicated than just, people who just want to have sex for money or choose to sell their bodies for money. It's much more complex and nuanced than that. These people are not parasites, as some would label them. They're not lazy. They're not leeches. They're not gold diggers. They're not a group of people that we can just disrespect and justify that disrespect by making up all these lies and misconceptions about them. Sex workers are real workers. They've been providing a service to the majority of humanity since the dawn of civilization. And, to see them be treated so horribly is a huge injustice. And I believe that a lot of people on the left, socialists, Marxists, and communists, we do not treat this issue the way we should. We often approach it in a very black and white way, right? Fuck's sakes, the Soviet Union, friggin' the first communist nation on earth, or the first socialist nation on earth, however you want to look at it, basically treated sex work as the same way any Christian evangelical society would treat sex work. Outlaw it, fucking just, persecute anybody in the profession. It's immoral, it's this, it's that. But a lot of the decisions, the legal decisions that are made about the sex work industry regarding the industry itself are made without the consent or the perspective of those who actually work in the industry. The industry is very vast. It's very diverse. Hell, the age of the internet and technology that, all of us have a computer in our pocket, sex work takes on many forms. It's no longer just as simple as prostitution or buying porno mags or shooting pornography. Phone sex operators have been around for a while. Not safe for work voice actors. Picture any kind of service where you provide a sexual service or something like that, you can consider that sex work. Although sometimes it's up to the individual, right? Um, and sometimes it's how the individual interprets their own line of work. And it's questions like these that we're going to be asking today. And I've brought on three people today, three guests, that will help me dive into this topic. And basically, we're going to attack and try our best to dismantle and address the stigmas and misconceptions that mainstream society has regarding the sex work industry, as well as the ways in which capitalism facilitates the overall exploitative nature of the industry, and how the removal of capitalism could actually benefit the people in that industry and make it more ethical. We're going to be asking a bunch of questions like this and more. So without further ado, because I know I'm not going to be blabbling for an hour and a half about this, I would like to bring on two of our three guests right now. Here is Anna, and here is Zoe. Hi, guys. How you doing? Please say hello to the people. How are y'all doing?
Great.
We got Anna over here. Sorry. We got Anna over here, and we got Zoe down there. Now, you two have both been on this show before, but separate, never together like this. And it's been a pleasure to have both of you on whenever I do. So please introduce yourselves to the audience, give them your pronouns, your name, what you're all about. We'll start with Anna, and then we'll go to Zoe.
Cool. Okay. I'm Anna. Anna, stop crying. She, her. I've been doing online sex work since I was 18. So that's like 5 years now. My birthday was a few days ago. So 5 years now, approximately. And I'm currently in rehab. I've been struggling with addiction, but, doing a lot better. So, yeah.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for sharing with us. Zoe, on to you now. Please state your name, pronouns, what you're about. I believe your microphone is muted.
Oh, no. You're muted.
There we go. My name's Zoe. She, her. I've also been doing sex work for about 5 years. And I guess I'm just existing.
Oh.
That's what I'm about.
I've known both of these two for a while now. They're very lively individuals. And like most people in the industry, they do have their own struggles and their own hardships, both related to and unrelated to the industry. But sometimes these hardships that one has in their personal life can, cross over to how it affects their line of work. Because it is a very personal industry. It's a very intimate industry. The personal lives of people who work in this industry affect their work more than, any of us care to realize. We do have a third guest on that. She's running a little late at the moment, but she will be joining us a little later in around half an hour or so. In fact, I will check in with her shortly. But in the meantime, I will start you guys off with a single question just to open up. We'll go to Zoe first, and then we'll go to Anna. What made you decide to pursue this line of work? What made you decide this is best for me, or this is the best option for me?
I started doing it because I thought it would help me with my body image issues, and it has. Overall, it's been a form of therapy for me. I've started becoming comfortable with my body and with who I am.
So you were self-conscious at the time, or you felt that this would help you become more comfortable with yourself?
I just hated my body at the time, so I felt like this would help me become more comfortable with myself.
Has it helped you since? Has it been successful, do you believe?
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, you do seem like a very lively person. You do seem like somebody who is very confident. If I've known you for a while, you are very confident in yourself, more than most people I know anyway. So if it's worked for you in that regard, that's great. In what ways has it helped you? In what ways has, every time you do it, or however much time passes while you're doing it, in what ways does it help you look in the mirror and be more comfortable with yourself? Because I know for different people who may do it for that reason, there are different reasons as to why something like sex work would help them with their own image.
I guess it's just because like the more I kept doing it and like looking in the mirror, like the more I would see things about me that I liked. And like I began to like recognize parts of my body and see myself in like a way that I hadn't been able to see it before.
That's very interesting. Anna, what about you? What made you decide to pursue this line of work and why?
So I was in a residential treatment center / therapeutic boarding school from the ages of 14 to 17. So I missed out on a lot of crucial like adolescent social things. So coming out of that and just being very naive, and trying to enter the workforce at 17, it was very, very difficult for me. And I ended up getting sexually assaulted at my first ever job. And that really affected how I saw work in general, and the interactions between coworkers and bosses and things like that. I just had a lot of anxiety there even before that. I mean, I was just like psychosomatically throwing up constantly at work from anxiety. I just didn't really know how to handle that. And I was comfortable enough with my body that I wanted to pursue sex work. I don't feel I was pushed into it or manipulated into it in any way. I think it was a very, very voluntary decision, and something I'm very glad that I have done and been doing. It's fulfilling for me. Everyone likes validation. So, I mean, it can be validating at times. It can be awful at times. It can be terrible at times, but comparing it to my experiences as like a wage cook, you know what I mean? It's definitely preferable for me, at least.
Yeah, you've told me about your experience at your first job before and what happened, and it. I know I've said this before, and I don't want to like sound like a broken record, but that is absolutely horrible, and I guess it does make sense that you would. Everyone says like at some level, I'd like to work for myself and stuff like that. But it's more than just the idea of making your own money your way. It's a sense of security. It's a sense of safety. It's a sense of control that you
And
have.
autonomy.
Yeah, autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't picture something like that happening to me on any job. I would be horrified, mortified. But I'm glad that, this line of work grants you that bit of security.
Right. I was able to turn it into something more empowering, obviously, with the doing sex work. So
would you say that sex work has helped you sort of process like a lot of the things that you were deprived of in your youth, or things that weren't exactly ideal for you? Or
I think it's definitely been beneficial in helping me heal from even prior, sexual trauma. Just getting more comfortable with my own sexuality, where I used to be just completely would say sex repulsed. Like in my personal life, I did not, engage in sexual activity for a very long time. And eventually I was with a partner who helped me, kind of wade in the water and figure out what I was comfortable with and what I wasn't. And I think sex works also contributed to helping me figure out what I like, what I don't. Just I didn't have those experiences when most of my peers did, which was much younger. Having your first crush or first, boyfriend or girlfriend and things like that, prom and stuff. I just didn't have those experiences, and definitely I was late to the game, but and I'm still healing for sure. I mean, it's definitely, I'm still dealing with the consequences of my trauma. If and when I do want to, engage in sexual activity, that it's always there, and it's been a huge process to become comfortable and enjoy, sex genuinely. Has been a huge battle for me, because at first it was very validation driven, and I had to feel out what made me feel like shit and what didn't. And I think sex work's been really beneficial to that as well.
Man, yeah, like I said before, there are hardships that everyone, especially in this industry, has to deal with. But not only, as I said, like those hardships can affect your line of work, but your line of work, if it's this personal to you, can also help you address those hardships or help you approach them in a certain way that helps you overcome them.
Right.
I know that both of your lives have had a relatively large amount of difficulty. And I know Zoe has been through somewhat, similarly difficult experiences. I don't know if you would feel comfortable sharing any of that with us, Zoe, but you're welcome to if you like.
For me, I wasn't really like sexually assaulted at a job. I ended up getting abducted and going through sex trafficking for about 3 months before I was able to get away. So sex work was, for me, in most part, able to, like, a way for me to reclaim what I felt that I had lost, for me to, like, reinsert control and replace memories and feelings of what had happened with memories and feelings that I choose, like I chose to do this, not like this happened to me. So it was like a form of like I said, therapy for me, because I was able to pick and choose what I wanted.
For sure.
What amount of, you say you were able to pick and choose what you wanted, like we mentioned before, it's like the job does give you some kind of security in that regard, in the sense that you could be very selective about who your clients are and what you do for what amount of money. Has it ever gotten to a point where things just become so bad one day? Have you ever been pushed to a point where you've wanted to quit sex work? Has anything happened in your line of work, or maybe in your life that doesn't relate to your line of work, that makes you say, maybe this isn't right for me? I'll go to Anna first, and then we'll go to Zoe.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It was definitely something that I used to feed my addiction for a long time. And I ended up, doing things and creating content that I really was not comfortable with, and did not enjoy. Was just kind of doing it because, to me, it felt like a necessity. I felt like I needed, to do that. And I'm glad to be at a point now where I'm in recovery and don't feel like I have to make those decisions anymore. But definitely for a while, definitely on numerous occasions, I was making content or fulfilling requests that I really was not comfortable with, and would not have done if that wasn't my situation in which, I was struggling so badly with addiction.
Man, how I know you said you were in rehab, like right, you're in rehab. It's my understanding that you're in rehab for your addiction that you said. How your struggle with addiction? How have you been doing lately? Actually, how are you in a better place than you were before?
Yeah, I'm definitely doing better. It's pretty up and down. I mean, I'm in a sober living facility right now, doing outpatient treatment, and it's very much like I can't just like leave and go get food or something. It's still very structured here. And so, hopefully just progressing and moving to like lower levels of care to where I get a little bit more freedom and um, things like that, I'm looking forward to. And, I was in recovery last year. I was actually at this exact same facility last year, but I was forced to be there. And um, I did stay off my DOC for nearly 8 months, even when I'd started out, going against my will. But I mean, this time I had to beg to come here because I could not continue living the life that I was living. I mean, I was just a zombie. I was in hell, of my own making, and I could not physically stop, and so I did a whole like detox thing, and I was in the hospital for a while, and then residential treatment, and then to now be in like a sober living and outpatient um, sort of situation. So definitely making progress, which is good, and optimistic actually, which thank you for asking. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, because well, one of the things I wanted to highlight this episode in particular is how, like, sex workers are people. They go through these struggles like anyone else, and we could all be in their shoes. And even if you're not in their shoes, you could still go through similar struggles to them. And I'm really happy that you both have found some solace doing this kind of work. And if there are struggles in your life, I'm really happy that you're both working hard to overcome those struggles. Um, what would you say? What would you say has been the biggest way your life has improved since taking up sex work? I'll go to Zoe first, and then we'll ask Anna.
I guess I have more respect for my body, and myself because of what I have been through and with the way that I do things. My only problem is that a lot of the times clients just don't pay or they don't get back in touch, and I can't be very pushy about that. So there's that, but at the end of the day, it still helps me with my body image, and I'm still happy with who I am as a person today because of it.
Well, I'm really sorry that there are people who just like don't want to pay you or take advantage of your services. But I am glad that it has helped you with your image. And if you feel like that's been worth the journey, then I really do respect that. What about you, Anna?
For sure. I mean, it's helped me a lot, like I said before, with, um, you know, like Zoe said, reclaiming my body, um, and becoming more empowered in that. But also, I mean, the element of more financial freedom. I mean, especially pre-addiction. um, that was definitely helpful. Um, Obviously, we live under capitalism. You have to pay to be alive. Um, and so, having a sense of financial stability was really great as well. And definitely, sex work is work. And so, ideally, you know, you're
Oh,
meeting your needs. And so that was helpful for me.
well, I'm glad everything these things have been helpful towards you too. I'll get into some questions about the broader industry because, I know that what you guys do is very different compared to, how other sex workers operate or how the majority of the industry operates, and I'm not trying to say, I'm not going to claim that everyone that I bring on tonight has the be all end all perspective on every corner of the industry. But you guys know better than anyone who's not a sex worker as to how the industry operates. We have Noli waiting backstage. I'm going to wait for Noli's camera and stuff to be ready. So whenever you feel like it, Noli, no problem. Just let me know in the private chat, and I'll introduce you. So another big question I have. I'll ask Zoe first, and then we'll go to Anna. What's the biggest misconception that you think people have when they learn that you're a sex worker, that you offer certain services for money? What's the first misconception or the first stigma, the most prominent thing that you deal with when people learn this about you?
I guess it would be that I'll take money from anyone or accept anyone as my client. In reality, I'm very, very picky about who I bring over and what I do.
So would you say the biggest misconception is it comes down to that whole thing of sex workers or prostitutes or whoever, they're just whores, they're money hungry, they'll do anything for money because they have no self-respect, all that kind of shit. But like you guys said, it's actually because you guys have so much self-respect, and because you guys are you guys are selective about the people that you do business with, about your clients. They don't give out their services to just anyone. It's not their job to give out their services to just anyone. And that's what makes this industry a little bit more unique. Whereas in other industries, you're kind of forced to take whatever client you come across. And it's only when they do something absolutely egregious are you within your rights to be like, nah, I'm not doing it. We've all heard stories, horror stories of people working in, say, the service industry having to put up with the rudest customers and just abuse because it's their job and they're not supposed to tell anyone off or, defend themselves in any way. But in your guys' line of work, it's different. You guys have that power. You guys have that ability to say no, tell people, take your attitude somewhere else, or, don't disrespect me like that. So that stigma, if anything else, is very incorrect and very much based in entitlement. What about you, Anna? What do you think do you agree with Zoe, or is there another misconception?
I definitely agree, but the main one for me is it's easy money, y'all playing life on easy mode. Anyone could do that, type of thing. When that is very much not the case. Definitely not the case.
Yeah. It's not the case because we often forget sex work is a very intimate job. It's a personal job, right? It involves you and your body. So of course, sex workers, you guys have the right and to be way more selective about who you do business with. And it shows you guys have self-respect.
And the idea that we're the only ones selling our body, you are too, you little wage cuck under capitalism, And my body's not going anywhere. It stays with me. I'm not, selling my body. I'm selling.
You're not chopping your limbs off.
Exactly. My body stays with me at all times. It's not going, anywhere else.
It's absolutely, it's mind-boggling when you examine the stigmas that are against sex workers, and then you look at the realities and realize it's the polar opposite of what people think. And like you said, capitalism, our society is structured to serve the needs of the rich and the powerful over the working class. And as such, we are all forced to, in some way, sell our bodies. By these awful, misguided people's definition, we are all, quote unquote, whores when you think about it, or at least in the way that they describe it, because we all give our bodies to this gigantic machine, right? If you're hammering nails, if you're roofing in the middle of July, where you're going up to roofs and you're replacing those tiles and getting your back and face and chest absolutely scorched in the sun, you're all for some company that's paying you barely what you're worth to do that. Guess what? You're selling your body. You're using your body to put those tiles in. If you're farming, right? If you're part of some kind of gigantic company like, say, McDonald's, when they harvest all those millions of potatoes and leave them to sit in those big containers because they're so toxic, they have to leave the toxins out for 3 days. You've sold your body, your labor, you're using your body to do that. So what is really the difference between that and using your body to sexually service somebody else? It may be a little bit different in terms of what kind of service you're offering, but you're using your body nonetheless. One just happens to be a little bit more intimate. And, everyone's like, oh, sex workers, they'll do anything for money. What about you? Aren't you the motherfuckers who go around applying for every single job, being like, I need this job, I really need this job, I gotta pay my way through school, pay my mortgage, pay my rent, all that stuff? We'll do anything for money because we have to, no matter if you're a sex worker or not. I'm very pleased to say that Noli is backstage, and I am going to go ahead and invite Noli on right now to join us in this conversation. Everyone say hello to Noli. Hello, Noli.
Hi.
Hi. Please state your name, your pronouns, and what you're about, and what you're doing here on tonight's episode of Red Scare.
Well, I'm Noli D. Pronouns, yeah, I'm Noli D. Call me what you will. I'll answer. It's fine. You can find me here on YouTube, or you can find me on Twitter or Facebook, or, all the socials. I'm here to discuss my experiences in the sex industry. And there's several in the feed who do not know this about me. So this will be the first time they've ever heard it. It's been 13 years since I've been in the sex industry, but there are still people out there who used to work for me who are still doing it the same way I did. And they're doing well, really well. So I guess I'm just kind of here to encourage those sex workers who are having struggles in the industry, and just share my experience and what I thought was needed most.
Well, that is why I invited Noli on, because Noli has, like the two of you, a very unique perspective when it comes to the sex work industry, because all three of you have been or are involved in some way, shape, or form, or know about it. So what I'd like to know, I'll ask Noli the question I was asking you guys earlier. Noli, what would you say is the biggest misconception or thing that people assume about you or anyone you know when it is revealed that you're part of the industry? What's the biggest misconception, would you say, sex workers have?
That they're dirty, or they're easy, or I should say or we're in the middle of an addiction. That's not always the case. And that we can be treated any way that people want to treat us, because we'll take it because they pay us to. But no, that's not how it works.
Yeah, because I've been talking with Anna and Zoe here. I keep pointing to the other side of the screen. I've been talking with Anna and Zoe here, and it feels like whenever we examine the stigmas and the misconceptions that people have towards sex workers, the reality always turns out to be the exact opposite, right? They'll say things like, oh, they're easy and they have no self-respect, but they have self-respect, and they are not easy, because sex workers, more than anyone, especially if they work for themselves, or at least how our capitalist society frames someone working for themselves, are more selective, and they get to be more careful about who they do business with. Whereas, like I said earlier, if you're a cashier at McDonald's, you have to put up with every single shithead that gives you trouble in your day-to-day life. But if you're a sex worker especially in today's, industry, because the internet has given us far more options now. If someone's giving you trouble, or if they don't want to pay up or anything like that, you don't have to put up with that. You can just move on to somebody else. So if anything, it gives you more power than most people have. And this whole thing of like, oh, they're dirty, they're easy, they're selling their bodies for money, they'll do anything for money. But what the fuck do most of us do anyway? We sell our bodies for money anyway. If I'm plowing fields for those massive potato farms that McDonald's own, where they just plant and grow those toxic ass potatoes to make into their bullshit salty fries, and I'm sweating like a motherfucker, and it's hurting my back and it's killing me, and I'm just harvesting all these potatoes. And the reason I don't quit and walk away, even though I'm enduring all of that pain, is I need this job. I got to pay the rent. I got to pay for my tuition. I need this job. And if you get fired, what's the first thing you do? You go around and you hand out like resumes and shit, because it's like, I need money. I need this job. I'll take any job. So when we tell sex workers, it's like, oh, they'll do anything for money. Bro, what the fuck do you think you're doing? Anything for money. But the difference is that sex workers actually do have some power over their own bodies, especially in today's industry, at least in the not darker part of the industry anyway. But yeah, basically that's what we always come to find, is that a lot of these stigmas, when we examine them, the reality is the exact opposite.
I think that when a lot of people find out that you do sex work, they feel entitled to your body, because one of the biggest things that I struggle with is like when I post free content here on like Twitter or my Fansly or stuff, people love it and everything, and they're quick to compliment me and everything. But when I ask them for something as simple as like, hey, can you pay $5 or can you pay $10? Then suddenly, they can't pay or anything like that. They don't want to pay. So I feel that like when people learn that like you're a sex worker, they feel like they should get that for free, because they're like, well, you do it for money anyways, so you should do it for free,
Yeah, it's a huge sense of entitlement. Well, not just towards sex workers. It's like a lot of straight men in Western society just feel entitled.
Obligated.
People's bodies all the fucking time, right? It's a social issue that we've been struggling with, and
I wanted to add something. I wanted to add something too. I mean, the idea that we're stooping so low and doing something we don't want to do, in terms of sex work, not sex trafficking, which is separate. Sex work is consensual. I mean, but capitalism is inherently non-consensual in a way. Like work or die. Not really an option, and all of us are faced with that. All of us, none of us can escape that.
I actually got fired from my job recently because I told my management that I was going to go to EEOC because they didn't want to do anything about a coworker who had gotten very physically aggressive and said numerous insults and transphobic things to me. So right now, all I have is sex work, which of course because I'm trans, people don't want to pay me as much. They don't want to give me that actual respect of paying me. So right now I can't afford to be like as picky as I normally could. I just, at this point, I kind of have to take what I can get because,
Yeah. And that is very horrible to have to deal with that. Zoe's perspective, all perspectives in the sex work industry are unique, but Zoe's perspective is unique in the way where Zoe doesn't just have to deal with the fact that, there's a lot of misogyny and a lot of sexism within the industry, within like the people who seek out the services of the industry in mainstream society. But Zoe also has to deal with transphobia. And if there's one thing that is facilitated a lot in this society, especially in the porn industry, is transphobia, where trans people are sexualized and treated as objects as badly as it's terrible. It's horrible, and I'm sorry that you've had to deal with that, but it is important that people like you get to share these experiences, and share these realities, and share the hardships that you had to deal with in terms of this. And it does strike me as a little bit odd how sex workers can endure so much just horrible bullshit, so much disrespect, so much dehumanization. They endure so much, and yet sex work is the world's oldest profession. Because with this amount of just horrible bullshit that's thrown y'all's way, you would think that no one would be in the sex work industry, that no one would be doing this. But the fact of the matter is, we all have to work to survive. We all have to pay to survive. This system basically forces us to put up with things that we don't want to put up with. It's no different from any other job. Well, it is different because it's a little bit more of a personal industry, like in the ways that we've mentioned before. But at the end of the day, capitalism creates this wage slavery that we're all forced to be a part of. But that's another thing I wanted to address, right? Because as horrible as capitalism is, and all that stuff, there are a lot of misconceptions that still exist about sex work on the left as well. Thank God I actually pointed to the correct side of the screen this time. Like I said, the Soviet Union outlawed sex work, and they, criminalized sex work and stuff like that. And their reason for doing so was a little bit different than the reason the capitalists do it. The capitalists like to come from a state of self-righteousness where they're like, dirty whores, they're immoral, they're selling themselves for money, and anyone who participates in it is dirty, and blah, 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 this evangelical bullshit. But the Soviet Union and leftists who think that sex work is just immoral and should be outlawed, their pretense for that is because capitalism forces us to work to survive, right? And the fact that sex workers, they're like, nobody chooses to work, even if their line of work is, something that they like. You have to do it basically at gunpoint. You have to do it in this society or you don't get paid and you don't eat. So those guys are like, let's just outlaw sexism because you can't trade sex. Sex is not something you should trade. It's not a product. It's an intimate thing, and it should be outlawed. Anybody who purchased the services of a sex work is committing a sexual crime, and anybody who participates in sex work is, is being exploited, whether they feel they're being exploited or not. And I do want to get each of your guys' answers. So what we're going to do is, I'll ask for Anna's response, then Zoe's response, then Noli's response in that particular order. So Anna, what are your thoughts on what I just said?
I think it's, it's adjacent and similar to what we've been, saying. Sorry, I kind of zoned out for a minute. My bad.
It's okay. It's all right. If you want, we can come back to you in a minute or two.
Yes. Sorry.
You should actually repeat what you said because I was interacting with the feed. So
no problem. Okay. Basically, to sum up what I said is, in the West, the capitalist West, you'll see, we outlaw prostitution because of the same old shtick. Because this, it's like, it's immoral, it's wrong. Whores, and everyone's like, buying and selling their bodies. This is terrible. You heard the conservative arguments against prostitution. You know what I'm talking about, why it's illegal in the West. But there are even people on the political spectrum, even the hard left, who have similar attitudes, but they come from a different perspective. Because they'll say sex work is immoral and should be criminalized and outlawed because capitalism forces us to work to survive. And even if you're doing something that you would prefer to do for money, like if I want to be an artist and I do art for money, whatever, I'm still doing it against my will. I'm still being forced to do it or I won't eat. Same thing with sex workers. And so their logic is anybody who participates in purchasing the services of a sex worker is by default committing a sexual crime. And if you are a sex worker, their perspective is you are being exploited and you're participating in your own exploitation, and sex is not a product, it's not something you could trade, you can't buy consent and and therefore it's just outright immoral and wrong and everything like that. So I want to really get the perspective of sex workers on this topic, because these are the perspectives that are always left out of the argument, even when we talk about those self-righteous pricks who think that they're doing sex workers some kind of favor by outlawing it and criminalizing it. It makes absolutely no sense. So I want to ask you guys about that. So Noli,
okay, sorry, I did. Okay, so now I'm caught up really quick. Yep, but okay. I think the morality argument is very interesting, because they're all consuming, our content and other sex workers' content. Yet they cannot humanize the individuals behind that content. I have this idea that you cannot demand a service and simultaneously degrade those who provide it, and I think that's similar to service industry scenarios. People talk about, flipping burgers and stuff like that, and how that's, viewed as less than, or, non-skilled labor, which is not a thing. But yeah, I mean, the morality argument is garbage for sure. And I mean, it's because they can't make money off of us that it's not a part of that. 'Cause, I mean, if you'll see what happened with weed getting legalized in many states, now the government's profiting from it. Now it's cool with them because they're profiting from it. But I think they haven't really figured out a way to tax our bodies in that way. In the same sense. And I mean, it's a war on our bodies regardless, as is evident with recent, events and things like that. And so it's clear why they don't want us exercising our own autonomy. That shows in very many other sectors, that they just are not comfortable with women utilizing their own autonomy, profiting from it in any way. That's very consistent.
Man, yeah, you can't demand a service from someone and then degrade the people in that service. What about you, Noli? We'll go to Noli and then we'll go to Zoe.
Okay. Well, there's a couple. It's kind of a multifaceted question that you threw out there. First, I want to bring attention to what James Freeman said in the chat. The people who made sex work illegal are the same people who are trafficking children. Yeah. And who are forcing or trying to get bills passed so that an adult can marry a 12-year-old down in Arkansas.
They have a bill like that here in Tennessee, where instead of going through the normal marriage process, it allows you to go through the marriage process through a different way, which would allow you to get legally married. But because they don't specify ages, if that bill passes, it would allow adults to marry children, because it's seen under the guise of a different way for straight people to get married.
That's disgusting.
I just want to add that I'm in Texas.
Oh my goodness, you guys. You're in the wrong states, I'm telling you.
You need to leave. Texas is, I wish you could go back to Texas, not being a state.
Can we start a GoFundMe to get every person like you guys out of the South? What the hell are
you? Can you get out of America? If we're going to, because see, I haven't left Tennessee because it was like, if I'm going to move, I want to move out of the country, but I don't even have a passport.
It costs money to get a
also,
you should get one there. Get a passport. Even if you never intend on using it, get one.
Yeah, but the problem is
I just can't afford to go anywhere.
I don't make enough money to do that based either off of my sex work, because most people are only interested in it if I offer it for free, or they don't pay me, or like, for example, when I post pictures on Twitter, they get likes and stuff like that. But then when I post them on Fansly, nobody wants to pay for them. And then because I recently got fired, which I still wasn't even making enough to live when I worked there, I I don't have the money to do that.
What about you, Noli? Like, I want to reiterate the question quickly, right? Again, the morality of the people who outlaw sex work in the West, they are creeps. They are exploitative pieces of shit. They are, the evangelical fuckwads and stuff. And they think it's
And they have
immoral.
no morals. I'm sorry. Many of the clients that I had coming through the hotel were people that were leaders of the church, or they were leaders in the community, or they were judges, or they were attorneys, or they were the prosecuting attorney for the county.
Yeah, hypocrites, absolute hypocrites. But I do want to address a very specific group of people. Like I said, there are people on the left side of the political spectrum who you would think that they would be in support of sex workers, and they think they are, but they're still for banning it and criminalizing it. They just have a different perspective, and their perspective is you can't buy consent. You shouldn't trade sex. Sex is not a product. You can't sell your body. You can't sell your consent. Anybody who purchases the services of a sex worker is automatically committing a sexual crime, and anybody in the industry is contributing to their own exploitation because capitalism forces us to work to survive. You would not be doing this if you didn't have to work to survive. Even if you enjoy it, it's still exploitation because you have to do it.
Well, there is a difference. There is a small difference between a felony and art. And all you need to do is grab a camera, and you are no longer committing a felony. So I think sex workers today need to go ahead and utilize that to their benefit, to keep them safe, to create content for online, and to keep them from being exploited not only by their clients, but by the police and by the judges that are in their area. Take a camera with you. It is no longer a crime.
Yeah, that is a really fucking.
I
It is
also
a
want
freedom
to
of
say,
expression. It's artwork, and they cannot touch you. And that's federal. There's not a state in this country that can touch you on that. They might try to, but take it to court and take it all the way to the box. You will win.
What were you saying, Zoe?
I do want to say, especially regarding the hypocrites, because if you look at the bills and stuff, 2022 is shaping up to be the deadliest year in recent history for trans people. And at the same time, we have people who are actively making bills and laws to actively outright erase our existence as people, while also seeing us as fetishes that they can exploit. Tennessee has written numerous. I'm sure Texas has, Iowa, the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. They're all introducing bills that more and more as they get through and as they pass give us less rights and less protections. I know 31 states have the trans panic law and that you can use as defense if you kill a trans person.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it a lot more dangerous because our only real option at that point is being forced into sex work because it's the only one that's still going to pay. So it's either we go into closet, into hiding, or we go into sex work and we sell our bodies. And it does tend to be more dangerous because especially with the people that, I bring over, that I meet up, it's dangerous because if they do something, I don't have any means of defending myself. And because my legal rights are being written and voted away, there's less and less protections that I do have. So I don't think it's so much more about selling our bodies as it is we're being forced to essentially give them away for whatever few rights that we still have.
What about you, Anna? Is there anything you'd like to add?
I mean, everything that they've said is accurate and important. definitely there is a huge added layer. You know, being a trans sex worker,
Yeah.
the transpanic law is insane. And I mean, when we were talking about, going back to people in positions of power, and their obsession with policing bodies, and exploiting bodies at the same time, like it was legal for cops to have sex with people in their custody up until very recently. And I think maybe in some states it is still legal. That is a massive power imbalance that is terrifying.
I think the other thing, sorry to cut you off, but I think the other thing is that people assume automatically that regardless of what police officers do and cops do and everything like that, like whatever mess up things that they do, that they think that judges are going to do the right thing. And what they don't realize, or what they choose to ignore, is that judges, the justice system, is one of the most corrupt and bribed system in America. So it's not like, oh, we'll just do what the cop says and then the judge will do the right thing. Most of the time, it won't work out that way.
Yeah. People want to believe in like this inherent sense of justice and morality, that things will work themselves out and they don't need to get involved. But really, I mean, it doesn't work like that, especially in the justice system, where people just assume that, people will be properly, appropriately, and, proportionately punished, for crimes, when just consistently that is not the case.
Yeah, I believe there was such a thing as, well, there is such a thing, but it's still active in a lot of places. It's called the gay panic defense or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that, reading about it, and I wanted to say I couldn't fathom someone being that horrible, but I can't. But I can, and I do, and it is very easy to imagine that, right?
I want to bring up something that someone said in the chat. The Don't Say Gay bill is not as misunderstood as you think. Essentially, what it boils down to is that we can't teach children bodily autonomy. Like, we can't teach them that, it's okay to say no, and the proper, don't let people touch you here and here and here. It's a way of preventing children from learning that adults don't have an automatic right to their bodies, disguised as, oh, well, children don't need to hear about gay people. It's way more than that. It is essentially writing away children's protections under the guise of gay people are perverts that they seem to be writing on, with calling them groomers, or that one Republican lawmaker who said that trans people should be put in front of a firing squad. It's a way of taking away the protection that the most vulnerable people in America, the children, have, and disguising it as, well, it's okay because we're getting rid of the gay people,
Yeah,
It's not just, oh, well, we can't say that we have two moms or dads, or that we can't teach them what sex is. It's way more dangerous than that.
Yeah, there is no end to how absolutely horrible these Republican legislatures will go. Hell,
Yeah. The United States loves using legislation to violate bodily autonomy, and we're seeing more and more laws now that restrict necessary healthcare protections and medical practices. But even just the legislation about child marriage, taking trans kids from their parents, forcibly detransitioning trans individuals, and removing that information from schools, and not letting teachers discuss their sexuality or books and things like that, and all it's doing is just endangering children and silencing groups that are being harmed by these things. It's definitely very dangerous.
Yeah, I do think I know that all of this like newfound just absolute legislative hatred that we've been seeing towards women and LGBTQ people and other minorities in this regard, especially trans individuals. It's part of a new wave of far-right overt fascism that is taking hold in America. America has always had fascistic tendencies, but they have been showing themselves even more because
it's been so blatant, right?
Yeah.
It's been so obvious, and it's like saying the quiet part out loud, you know, like they're not even hiding it anymore.
They're not pretending.
You know,
It's
there's
because up until Trump was elected, we were, I don't want to say we were heading down the right path, but we were heading down the path where they couldn't just be so open and outward about it. And then because he got elected, and with how dumb he is and just loud and bigoted and racist, they felt comfortable being open and direct about it because, you know, if the president's that way, then nobody else can stop them. And then everything after 2016 has been on a downward spiral. Everything that we've been working decades for and that people have been sacrificing and dying for has literally been taken away from them. Because especially the other thing is, if Roe v. Wade gets overturned, that also gets rid of the, oh, well, we have a right to privacy because that's not listed in the Constitution. The next thing is gay marriage. Interracial marriage is on the table because that's a part of right to privacy. Every other right given to the non-cis male white people is on the chopping block. If Roe v. Wade gets overturned, everything else is on the chopping block to get overturned too. And the problem is at this point, voting does nothing because, you know, if we vote, it doesn't matter because they're into the guise of, oh, well, if you vote, it does something. That's why we're moving the voting stations farther away and everything. And the whole thing is that politicians are all talk. I mean, it's solving nothing. Oh, it'll happen. Roe v. Wade's going to get overturned. It's going to happen.
Yeah, all these things that we were told for so long were, you know, oh, that would never happen. Like, that's such a silly idea. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
When so many people have been warning us, though, and it's only like they were, you know, it's the same with like climate change, and they were all deemed like alarmists and, oh, you're panicking for no reason. Chill out. You're stressing people out. And now all this shit is happening, and it's like,
yeah. I wanna address some shit I'm seeing in the chat. Right. First of all, stop saying it'll never happen. It's fucking happening.
They've already erected barricades after one of the justices leaked that Roe v. Wade might get overturned.
Yeah.
As far as I heard, it's supposed to be voted on in June during Pride Month, which isn't set for just like, oh, a specific random reason. It's a part of a large chain of events to effectively eradicate and erase queer people on the planet, because it may not be the right words for this, but the only way that I can describe what's happening, especially to transgender people for the most part, because even a lot of people within the queer community don't want to admit that they're transphobic, is it's a genocide of trans people and in larger part queer people that's happening right now. And everybody thinks it's just something as simple as abortion laws and stuff, as if that doesn't affect literally every other facet of, you know, cis women, trans men, anyone who's not a straight white male. Because the thing is the rich people will always be able to get one, you know, because they're just going to go on vacation conveniently and then come back and not have it. You know, rich people will always be able to get it, but the poorer class won't be able to access it through any safe means now.
I'm trying to keep myself held together here because you guys are all Americans and I'm Canadian. You guys are very informed.
Yeah, I forgot. I'd be forgetting you're Canadian. That's wild. Oh,
I'm Canadian, so shit's a little bit different up here. I'm not saying we don't have our own issues to deal with. We fucking have plenty of those. But I want to address some shit that I'm seeing in the chat very quickly. First of all, stop saying that bad shit can't happen in your state or in your country just because you live in the West or America or whatever. It's fucking happening. For the last, I don't know, hour or so, I've brought on people onto this panel to discuss how their rights have been threatened, and in very recent times, rights are being taken away. Zoe has basically poured her heart out in expressing how horrible the United States is treating
I want to say, in the state of Tennessee, it's legal to murder me. I can get legally killed. So all this talk that you're doing of, oh, the Democrats this, the Democrats that, it's not, oh, I'm not buying into the bullshit. I'm the person who's having to live through all this bullshit that you're saying and that you're buying into. Because at this point, anytime I step outside my apartment, I risk dying just because I happen to live.
Yeah.
It's not because Democrats this or Republicans this. It is because America is a fascist nation with a fascist government, and it's always been so. It's not Democrats versus Republicans because they're two sides of the same coin. They're still the same thing.
Yeah. By saying it can't happen here, you are invalidating the words of the people who are suffering the most.
And it's what's already happening.
Yeah, it's already
if
happening.
Roe v. Wade isn't happening, why has Texas, Michigan, other states have already made abortions felonies? Because at this point, if you even have a miscarriage, even if it's not your fault, that's a felony.
Yeah.
And if you're a felon, you can't vote.
I'm going to be
You're literally erasing any voice anyone who is not a cis white male has.
Yeah.
And for so many people, it's just a conversation, but for you, it's your life, you know?
Yeah.
It is my life. Like, people can get off of here and they think, oh, it's just a conversation. Mm-hmm. This is my life. This affects whether or not I'm still going to be alive by the end of this, tomorrow, whatever. It is every fact of my entire day-to-day life. I cannot do anything without being directly affected by this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, I'm going to very quickly say this for anybody who is confused about any of this.
Yes, if you're a felon, you are not allowed to vote until you get your records expunged or whatever.
If
My dad
even happens,
is 47 years old, 49 years old, and for 22 years, he hasn't been able to vote at all because he got arrested when he was 17.
What basically, the basic idea I want to get through most people's heads, anyone in chat, anyone in the comments or the chat, or anyone who may not get this, right? The profit motive is what our society revolves around. And over time, because of inflation and a bunch of different factors, the 1% has to keep expanding their pockets. They have to keep expanding their fortune because inflation and all that shit. It's why your grandpa says, hey, when I was your age, 5 cents could buy me 5 pounds of candy. Yeah, he wasn't wrong. Now, thing is, that leads to more and more corruption. The profit motive must be pursued at all costs. So politicians and legislatures are bought out to make sure that workers' rights are eroded and profit margins are expanded. This leads to poorer and poorer and poorer material conditions and the erosion of the middle class. This leads to poverty, which white supremacists and other political extremists in the West use to prey upon the masses and convert them to their ranks. Anybody in chat who is saying that all these transphobes and homophobes and sexists that we have in levels of government, they're not misinformed. They're not just out of touch boomers. This is intentional. This is part of a fascist wave. Poverty equals political disenfranchisement, which leads to both the radical left and right gaining popularity. And because y'all live in motherfucking the United States of Amerifuck, you guys live in a country where the Red Scare has been very effective in stomping out the left opposition. The right wing has a huge fucking advantage. So they've been able to prey on women, on trans people, on LGBTQ individuals, on any minority you can think of. And the reason why they're able to do it is because dumb motherfuckers keep thinking that other people's human rights are a topic of conversation or debate. I brought on everyone on this panel today because they're going through real hardships, real struggles, real persecution by the state. And if anybody trivializes that and says it's not happening, or they're just misinformed, or that's not happening how I see it, stop it. Open your ears and listen to the people who are affected the most. please do not say these horrible things, and you're just gaslighting everyone by saying Roe v. Wade's not going to be overturned. Although don't say gay bill's just misinformed, or trans people don't have it that bad. Stop it. It's not helping. And
the other thing is states cannot do whatever the fuck they want. That's why federal law is in place. The things that states can do is largely on part states' rights, such as religions and things like that. It's one of the reasons why child marriage is still a problem, because it's seen as a religious issue protected under states' rights, even though it's separation of church and state. You keep talking about this one specific person who I'm seeing in chat, who keeps saying that, Roe v. Wade's not going to be overturned. The Democrats are doing this. The Republicans didn't do this. They're playing us, whatever. It's not that I'm being played. It's that my life is literally being debated and taken away from me. And you're sitting here saying, oh, well, you're just being played, as if you're so much better just because your life isn't up for debate. I don't know what you're trying to get at, but if you can't figure out that simple problem, then I don't know why you keep commenting. No one's debating your life.
That is not
okay. I can link you every direct anti-transgender bill passed and is currently passing in 2022. If you can keep saying no one's debating my life all you want, but if you watch anything more than actual mainstream news that they put on TV, then maybe you might learn something.
God,
insane.
This kind of shit is just absolutely insane.
I think it's at least, some people are getting more disillusioned with electoral politics because all of this is happening with a Democratic majority, the president and shit like that. But this is still happening. I think that's, shedding some light on the fact that electoral politics means nothing. For at least some people, they're coming to that realization a little late. But at least they're coming to that realization at this point. And, I'm trying to steer them in the right direction in terms of like leftist theory and stuff. But yeah, I mean, the idea that like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Go out and vote is so fucking stupid. Because like y'all tried that.
Yeah.
Don't you feel dumb? Don't you feel stupid? Yeah. Like no one here is falling for, a democratic or a democratic theory or whatever. Like that's not at all. And I mean, they are no better than the Republicans. Like that is exactly the fucking same, just because they can put a little sparkle emoji on their legislation to take away rights from individuals. Like they're no better. Like neoliberalism is absolutely adjacent to every single thing that's still happening that y'all are that we're talking about. So
my God, yeah, this whole thing is very intersectional, right? Mm-hmm. All issues affect one another in some way. And, I'm really sorry if this has gotten a little bit off topic, but sex workers, if anything, are comprised of people of all different walks of life, right? Whether they be queer or straight or cis or trans, it makes no difference. All of these different laws and legislations affect people of all varying walks of life. And it's really pissy to see people just deny that it could possibly be this bad. Noli, I wanted to ask you a question. Wanted to ask you something, and we've been seeing a lot of legislation attacking the rights of women, of trans folk, of queer folk, right? And based on, and we know that more and more people are going to be targeted by Republican legislation. We know it. They're going to come for a bunch of different people next. So my question for you is, based on precedent, any sort of precedent that's been set in the past in regards to legislation regarding the sex work industry, what do you think we can expect to see from the state in terms of passing legislation that affects the sex work industry, because I know that shit's coming. Or if it's already, if we've already seen legislation that does indeed address that, I would like to be informed on that.
I mean, like SOSTA, what was it? Was it those two bills that were like SOSTA and FES, something like that, that greatly affected online sex work and like took down Backpage and stuff like that, and the idea, oh my God, we're stopping human trafficking, when in reality they are just taking away resources for sex workers to interact with each other and communicate, and so that was a thing that just happened not a couple of years ago, I think. SESTA and FOSTA, I think, were the names of those legislation. But I mean, it's for sex workers. I mean, I don't feel like it could get much worse. I mean, it's already just illegal, and yeah, I mean, and there's the debate, in several, like, was it like MasterCard and things like that, like saying like, they won't process payments to sites that have sex workers on them and things like that.
Like the other thing is like even OnlyFans, which allows sex content, some of my content has been taken down because it violates the terms and services. And at that point, I'm just like, I don't see how it violates it. You can't say we allow sex work, but we only allow this type of sex work, And then, like I said, the other thing is the fact of it's very hard for me to put out content, on a regular basis when I get very little interaction with it. It feels like I'm putting in way more work than I'm getting out. So when I go and I spend an hour, 2 hours trying to take pictures, trying to get the right angles and stuff, and I go to upload it, and then I get like maybe 3 people like it, and of those 3 people, they're all other sex workers who are just going down the list liking, and not like actual people who are like actually subscribed and stuff. It doesn't feel like it's worth it, because at this point, like I said, every picture that I post on Twitter, or like if I ever post content on anywhere else, Discord, Reddit, gets way more interaction just because it's free. People don't want to pay for content because they view that they view that they should get our bodies for free. They view entitled to it.
Noli, what do you make of the laws regarding sex work in the United States, and how can we expect them to get worse? Because they're probably gonna get worse with all this.
I think that they're probably gonna get worse, but you got to realize that there are organizations out there who are fighting for sex workers' rights. So, like Amnesty International is, they're working on some really great legislation that they're trying to get put into effect, and they're supporting it. They're trying to get it decriminalized, as long as it's an aspect of consensual adult sex. They're being very detailed about what it is that they're asking for, and there are places to turn to. They're trying to help people get World Health Organization involved, and the International Labor Organization involved. They're getting the Global Alliance Against Trafficking in Women involved. I mean, it's not just, there's all these different groups of people who are fighting for sex workers. And it's kind of sad to see, but so these same groups of people are getting attacked because they are trying to fight for sex workers' rights, and for just to keep sex workers safe and healthy. I don't think it's right that they have to be put in a dark room, or put in a basement, or put in a cellar somewhere, or they got to stay in the dark and seedy side of town, or they better not step foot outside their house during the day. I think that kind of stigma that gets placed on them is not. It is placed by those who think they have a moral superiority, but they don't. And I think that the more and more allegations come out against our politicians for their own sex crimes, like our president right now, I'm sorry, what he did to Tara was a crime.
Yeah.
He should be prosecuted to the fullest. Nobody should be above the law.
And he is
I
protected
think the
by
same
the
thing about
power.
Trump, and I think the same thing about Clinton. Clinton should have fucking went to prison for what he did. He took advantage of somebody. He was in a position of power, taking advantage of somebody who was beneath him, who was an intern. I mean, like, you can't get any lower than that.
Yeah, it was very predatory. A lot of people in the United States, predators, are protected by the political power that they wield.
It's because those in political power are the predators.
Yeah, they are the predators. A lot of these Republican legislatures that are writing all these bills that attack women, that attack trans people, that attack queer people in general and women, you look at them and you're like, you guys have defended rapists, you guys have befriended rapists, and you guys have passed laws that protect rapists. So you guys, there's a good chance that a lot of them are rapists themselves. Like, it's probably not even a debate at this point.
My favorite thing was seeing this pastor talk about how natural disasters are God's way of punishing gay people. And then not even a week later, his house got swept away in a flood. It's hilarious, but it brings it up into a larger, more just like how Christians and toxic Christianity runs the country. Because as a whole, as an individual, I don't think a single Christian is at fault, but I think the mass, how to put it, publicized like churches and mega churches that you see on TV are to blame because at that point they all teach the same thing. Even like back in Texas when like the hurricanes and stuff happened, Joel Osteen didn't even open his church. He didn't even help out the people who were in need most. When I worked at a hotel, we had a church who would come by and buy rooms for homeless people, which is nice and everything. But also at the same time, it would put it on us at the hotel to take care of them and do everything like that. And I'm like, if they're with the church, why are they not allowing those homeless people in those churches and stuff like that? Because the other thing is nowadays most churches aren't just open 24/7. They're only open on Sunday mornings and Wednesdays, and if they're doing Bible classes and whatever. And then these people who are preaching this toxic Christianity way are also the same people who are either paying lawmakers or are lawmakers and are making these laws and stuff under the guise of protecting the children, even though statistically they're the most dangerous thing for the children.
Right. And there's a reason that churches don't pay taxes. I'm just gonna say that and fucking leave it, because I know that
if churches paid taxes, on average, citizens would only have to pay maybe 3% with the amount of money that they bring in. Because the other thing that I'm wondering is, if churches don't, like, how do churches pay their staff if they don't pay taxes and stuff like that? Because the other thing is, there's no way they're getting that much money to pay their staff through donations.
Do you want to bet?
I mean, no, money laundering through like churches is so real, and like embezzling and
like
shit.
I mean, like through the Sunday donations where they pass the basket around and stuff.
If they're running their church, like, legally and morally, then yeah, they're probably not going to get enough, unless they're a larger church in the community. But yeah, there's lots of ways. Most churches like send all their donations and stuff that they get back to Rome, and then Rome will redivvy everything and send it back to them. Some get more, some get less.
Is that like a Catholic thing?
Yeah, that's a Catholic thing. So the Catholic churches, even in areas where you think, man, they got like 5 parishioners in there on Sunday, or, you know, I only saw 2 people in on mass on Monday or whatever. They're still getting plenty of money from Rome.
And a lot of people like make huge donations to churches in their community,
And they're
like
tax write-off. They're yeah, you can write them off.
yeah, also because it is tax deductible. I mean, I have family like in Louisiana that has an absurd amount of money for no reason, and they like every year send an absurd amount of money to like a local church, and I think that's a pretty common thing in like what they call like benefactors or whatever, shit like that.
That makes sense. But then the other thing is like, why is that tax deductible and stuff? Because
I mean, I guess because, like George Carlin said,
my
God always
main
needs more
thing
money.
was at this point, it's impossible to separate church from state because it's inherent in every law that they write and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, remember, like, because you guys said that the church was actually like, you know, they're not even open 24/7 anymore. They're open at certain times on Sunday. It's really weird because they always preach the church is God's house, but apparently God's not in from like 9 to 5 or something like that. Apparently that's not God's main home. Maybe he just like, you know, bought another one. Whatever, man. But like, what I want to ask all of you, and I'll start with Noli in particular. Noli, you had a long amount of years in the industry, and you've worked with a bunch of different people. So my question to you is this, and I'll ask you guys in 1 second after Noli. What should sex workers and people who are, you know, in the industry who are particularly at risk from all this shit that we've been talking about, what can and should they do now more than ever to fight for their rights, protect themselves, and protect each other? What should be done?
Well, I definitely think that getting involved in, like, you know, the Global Health Justice Partnership or sex, what is it? Let's see. Where's it at? Amnesty International. I mean, there's ways to get involved with these people to help with protests and stuff like that. I think letter writing, sending emails to your congressman, especially if you happen to know somebody who happens to know somebody who happens to know somebody who used to, you know, they used to be clients. That's, as far as like locally here, that's my way in is all I got to do is contact a few of my old contacts who were clients and let them know, hey, I'm not loving this bill. There's got to be some moral way that you can change this. But
damn. Yeah, in there.
So, I was not I don't even like to call myself this. I had several people who worked for me in the sex industry, and I paid for their hotel rooms. I made sure that they went and went to the health department once a month to make sure that they were good to go. They made good money. They were well taken care of. I really think it needs to be placed at a business aspect. If you look at the design that, what is that place down there near Vegas? Cadillac Ranch. They're still operating. I mean, it's like
one, the one in Nevada.
Huh? Yeah, you can legally work as a prostitute in Nevada.
Yeah, the Bunny Ranch. I think it was.
Yeah, the Bunny Ranch. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it is.
You know, we got to focus. I think it'd be a good idea to focus in on what legislation locally was done there to keep that legal. And I think letting people be aware that if prostitution were legal and could be ran as a normal business, people would be safer, not just the prostitutes, but the people who hire the prostitutes and the people that are going back home to their wives afterwards, because they're not going to take anything home with them if these women and men are able to get proper health care, if they're able to get access to proper health care. And you wouldn't have to worry about these women getting, they'd be getting a fair wage. They wouldn't be getting offered $20 here.
They'd have protections, they'd have security, they'd have certain things that would prevent people from being able to take advantage of them, right? Like there's an age limit to work. There should be an age limit if we legalized sex work. Basically, I'm going to ask Anna and Zoe as well, but basically what we're trying to say is the best thing we could do for sex workers is to legalize this industry fully. Definitely. And allow them to have more security and control within it.
But if you come at an angle from where you are actually protecting the families of the people who hire sex workers, if you come at it from that angle when you're talking to your legislatures and to your representatives, it makes a huge difference. I see people getting better protections from the government for sex work if people attack it from a different angle.
Yeah, because if you frame the argument in a certain way,
we're doing this because we want to protect you and your family.
Yeah. Anna, you next.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the question, like, what can we do? I would say get involved in local mutual aid organizations if you haven't already, and arm your comrades. Do that. Definitely, I think it would be beneficial to own a firearm and know how to use it. I personally have held off just because I'm severely mentally ill, but I
feel that, that's why I haven't gotten one.
Yeah. But
I'd have a bad day and then I'd be like, no more bad days.
You don't have to get one if you feel like you'd be made vulnerable by having a firearm close to you.
Yeah, no, definitely our safety is.
Yeah,
well, my self-defense plan is I'm just gonna get naked. I'm gonna grab whatever I have with me and I'm gonna swing at them because hopefully they'll be a little bit distracted.
Yeah, not many people expect that.
The element of surprise.
Yeah, you can advocate for people to be armed to protect themselves and not get a gun for yourself if you feel like it wouldn't exactly be safe for you to do so.
For sure, that's, I think, a priority. I am actually going to, I think, soon do that though, because I talked myself into this thing that I want to die pretty, and so I'll never shoot myself, and so that's how I'm going to skirt around that.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, if it works.
You should get a URL.
If it works.
Because, a gun is only good if they're not really close to you. And doing this kind of work, they're going to be really close to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think familiarizing yourself with it, learning your way around a gun and target range, fun stuff.
Yeah, so that way you could be like, oh, okay, so what was that about you not paying me full price for my services? Yeah, that basically.
But then I get arrested for threatening them because they didn't pay me for an illegal service.
Yeah, which is why it should be legalized, if anything. All these
at least decriminalized. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. That's another thing I want to settle. None of these policies that we're discussing that would benefit sex workers should be done in a vacuum. All of them should be done together. All right. We're advocating for all of these things.
Yeah.
Zoe, what about you? What do you think is the best thing that sex workers right now can do to protect themselves, to fight all this bad legislation?
And allies, I think, of sex workers too. What everyone can be doing.
Yeah. What can anyone do? What can we do?
I think more getting into, of course, obviously grouping up, arming ourselves, if we can, moving. The other thing that I think is getting people who, because obviously I can never go in politics, but like people who can, our allies, our friends who can get into politics, getting them in politics and things like that. The other thing that like is I do have a friend, he's a cis straight male, but he does a pretty good job with like trying to learn and trying to be a good ally and stuff, is getting them to understand just how much protection that we need and how much how vulnerable both the sex workers and as queer people we are and stuff, and getting because my main thing is if we can get at least a decent majority of the cis straight population to understand and come to terms with it, then we have better chances of getting legal protections passed with it and things like that.
Yeah. But it requires being just as aggressive as the far right is. So whatever we got to do to raise awareness of this kind of stuff, we got to do it 10 times harder than we normally were.
I think trying to appeal to their morality has not worked so far. And so I'm not saying go Kaczynski mode, go Ted Kaczynski mode, but I'm saying what we're doing is not working.
Yeah. I'm not going to discount anybody who thinks that who can deliver progress in the conventional way. But it is clear that we have to turn towards more community-rooted direct action in order to create spaces where sex workers are protected and facilitate basically pushing the state to, by force if necessary, recognize their rights. And one of the things about sex work that I don't think a lot of people consider is that, well, in this world, unfortunately, money is power, money is security, money is safety. And like I said, the sex work industry, it contains people from all walks of life, especially people who are vulnerable and at risk, right? So if sex work was made into a very legal industry where people suddenly have more pay, security, and access to different resources to protect themselves and the ability to leave whenever they want, and protection, right? Then it would grant more people who are in those marginalized groups power and protection from the far right and the state, which facilitates that violence. And that's probably why we're not going to see sex work get legalized in the conventional way, which is why we must pursue radical, more unconventional ways of legalizing this kind of stuff. If anybody's confused as to what I'm talking about, I had a previous episode of Red Scared, which I brought on the members of the Tenacious Unicorn Ranch, who explain how we can more radically pursue things to get our rights from the state, whether the state wants to give it to us or not. We are running a little bit over schedule here, so I am going to basically give all of us our parting words. But I want to say this very quickly. I brought all these people on tonight because they all have shared their perspectives, all their unique perspectives working in the industry and as the individuals that they are. And while I am all for open discussion and, positive discourse around this kind of stuff, constructive discourse, I'm not going to tolerate bullshit, gaslighting, lies, and ignoring the experiences of the marginalized and what my guests have to say. That is not helpful at all. It doesn't get anywhere and just makes the situation worse. So if anybody has a problem with that, I'm sorry, you need to move on. And, especially I don't want to tolerate the guests that I've brought on, Noli, Anna, or Zoe. I will not tolerate anybody attacking them or invalidating their experiences or what they have to say.
Yeah, and it's not that we're like policing the chat or being like, oh, you can't say that or whatever. I mean, it was just derailing the conversation, and we had a topic and we were just trying to stick to that topic. I think we got a little off off there, and like I don't know if the intention was to like stun lock us and derail us, but I mean we were doing something like
Well,
good.
it's over now,
Yes.
and I've made myself perfectly clear. I won't tolerate that kind of shit, and I'll do what it takes to not allow it. And I do want to thank you guys for coming out tonight and sharing your perspectives and your experiences. And I wanted to do that because I wanted to give you guys the platform to share your experiences. And I look forward to working with you guys again in the future and discussing these topics more in length in the future. I do want to work with you guys. So I will go around the room or the square and basically ask, oh shit, it's a rectangle. And basically tell the people where they can find you, where they can follow you, what you're about, who you are, and what to expect from you. So first we'll go with Noli. Noli, tell the people what you're about and where to find you.
Well, my name's Noli, and I am about protecting rights. And now more than ever, our rights are being attacked left and right. Not just, sex workers, everyone's rights. The First Amendment right is kind of my passion, and I mean all aspects of it. We hold lots of discussions about it on my channel. Another thing I'm really passionate about is, well, not necessarily police reform. I'd like to see police abolished, but that's just me personally. That would be like my wet dream right there, is to see cops be abolished. But I have discussions about this on my channel. You can find me Noli D here on YouTube, or you can find me over on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. I have a family page too, but it's mostly there to support others. But you can find me there. Pretty much type in Noli D anywhere, you'll find me.
No problem. All right, next, Zoe. Zoe. Tell the people what you're about, where they can find you, and what just tell them about you.
I'm on Twitter, Fansly, OnlyFans. It's the same as my little @username down here. I'm about sex positivity, sex workers, and lesbian nuns throwing it back for Jesus, because that's been on my mind recently. Well, no, because there's no way lesbian nuns didn't throw it back for Jesus. There's no way.
I agree.
I think that needs to get brought back. That is what we need. We need lesbian nuns throwing it back for Jesus.
If y'all love Jesus so much, just suck his dick.
Oh my!
I would totally go back in time and do it. Yeah.
You can't tell me he wasn't getting mad puss back then too, for real.
I mean,
Mary Magdalene was just his friend, guys.
Well, also, Jesus must have had a foot fetish, because I don't know about you, but I don't wash 12 grown men's feet without liking feet.
There's nothing wrong with having a foot fetish, by the way.
I appreciate
not kink shaming, but also
I cannot express how much I appreciate the hell out of all of you guys, especially you, Zoe.
Washing feet now.
Anna, tell the people where they can find you and what you're all about.
So I'm Anna. My Twitter is Anna Stop Crying. My Instagram literally just got fucking zucked like a few days ago.
No!
So right now it's Anna Still Crying. I'm trying to get it back. But no, I for real got zucked, and that shit was it's devastating. I really hope it's temporary, cause fuck that. And on God, Scuttlebug Massacre, like for real. No, that shit. Like there's no way that was not accurate. So
somebody said Jesus was hung.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but
yeah, so you can follow me for hot takes and even hotter pictures. No, I don't know. I should have said that the other way around. Hot pictures and even hotter takes. I don't know.
I just post whatever's on my mind. So if you like reading absolute garbage. That's me.
Same. If you are ever in the mood to rot your fucking brain.
That is why my brain is nice and fermented, because I follow everybody in this group.
Well, see, my Twitter background, like the cover picture, is a compilation of what I think are my funniest tweets. Like, I think that everyone back then wore sandals, not because they were the only shoes, because boots absolutely existed, but
They chose not to wear them. Please follow and support everybody on the panel here tonight where they said you can find them. I want to once again thank them all for coming out tonight, and thank everyone for joining us here tonight.
Thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure. Hell yeah.
The pleasure's all mine, you know. You guys are awesome, and it's been a privilege to have you guys on the show tonight. And like I said, I look forward to working with you all again in the future, discussing topics just like this. And you guys, your perspectives mean the absolute world to me. So on behalf of PVN, thank you guys for coming out tonight. And thank you everyone for showing up tonight. Fuck the state, support sex workers, and have a fucking good one.